All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Topeka. And we have water to drink. This trip, that's a nice upgrade from our last trip here. Thank you to all the locals for getting that done. Let's start with everybody's favorite, the approval of the minutes from our January 17th and 18th, 2024 meeting. Y'all were sent that ahead of time. Take a motion to approve unless anybody's got additions or corrections.
I move approval.
All right, moving second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, minutes passed. Do we have introductions in the house? Any introductions today? Okay. Yeah, I tell you. Oh, really? I think we should. I think you should get us started. Yeah.
Oh, it's Jeff's birthday. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jeff. Happy birthday to you. There we go. Thank you. And I believe we have the chancellor on via Zoom too. Is that correct? So, or coming on here pretty soon. Oh, there he is. Thumbs up. Okay. Any other introductions? Appreciate that. Or birthdays? All right. Okay. Haven't had to call for that before, but happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for being with us. Your K-Bor sweetheart today. Hope we don't get anybody in too much trouble at home. Okay. Report from the chair. I'm going to read mine today. I usually am a little more extemporaneous, but I wanted to be thoughtful with my word choices, and I want to address the issue of the day, which is DEI. So I'll start. I am using my opening remarks today to speak primarily to our internal audience, those in this room, those who are watching back on campus, and all of you who are working hard to advance the quality, availability, and sustainability of higher education in our state. It's important for you to know where your leaders stand on issues that affect your work. I hope to make it clear where I stand on the issues that are now commonly tied together as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let me be clear. I believe my comments reflect the heart of this board that's leading higher ed. I also believe the presidents and leadership of our institutions have deep convictions on these issues and will lead in their own way to support the students with whom they are entrusted. When I'm asked about my position on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm always curious as to what the person posing the question understands about the meaning of these terms individually and whether their understanding is informed by their own examination of the issues and personal experience, or whether it is just an abstraction of things that they have heard said about DEI. I hope to offer my personal reflections, acknowledging that I remain a work in progress and that I am continuing to learn through this process. Diversity in Kansas is a fact. Here in Kansas, we don't have to create or manufacture it. We have the unique opportunity to reflect it. Maybe at other institutions, to achieve meaningful diversity, they must take extraordinary measures to accomplish it. But here in Kansas, we need to keep the doors open, cultivate a welcoming learning environment, and work diligently to serve the needs of our constituents. With diversity comes a new set of opportunities, and we need to have the people and policies in place to effectively serve an ever-evolving student body. With respect to equity, which I take to mean fairness of opportunity to participate, it appears that there is considerable controversy over in the legislature, and I have trouble understanding the objections. I can only assume that there are those who hold to the belief that if you do anything at all to advantage one group, you are taking something away from another. This is not, in my opinion, a zero-sum game. In Kansas, we are concerned about the trend of falling enrollment, more about the trend of falling enrollment than the limits of capacity. We can, however, clearly see the obstacles faced by some of our students that result in underrepresentation of certain groups and often the failure to continue to completion. It is my hope that we are creating programs that help every student achieve success. I am even most perplexed by the objections to inclusion. I see inclusion as creating environments where all students, faculty, and staff feel like they belong. I know there are people who equate exclusivity with value. Again, the people in this room work every day trying to create dynamic learning environments where belonging is the foundation. The challenge we are faced with in Kansas is recognizing that our campuses include adult learners, veterans, first-generation Americans, and people attending school at night to further their education and make themselves more valuable in the workforce. All ethnicities are represented, all ages are represented, all Kansans are represented. We're trying to meet the needs of our people, not as groups, but as individuals. It takes effort and intention to cultivate a learning environment that supports inclusion and belonging. It is our aspiration to enhance all students' chances of success academically and economically and harness all the positive implications that it has for our state and our nation. I think it's imperative to address the pending legislation and ongoing negotiations that may impact the work on our campuses. The first is House Bill 2460, outlining limitations to admissions and hiring practices at our institutions. Since the bill was first introduced in 2023, the board and our institutional leadership have continued to work in good faith to honor the request of our peers in the legislature. House Bill 2460, from my perspective, creates significant confusion and potential conflict where unity and collaboration have been actively pursued. We remain open to continual dialogue related to both concerns raised in the bill, believing that legislative action must be reserved as the final step and not the first step in any meaningful change. The second area with our higher education is with our higher education budgets. The resources allotted to our institutions are of great significance to the student success. Reductions in funding, particularly related to DEI programs and services for students, will impact the lives of real people. I hope all involved will choose to engage in deep, meaningful conversations. Veterans receiving critical mental health services, food insecure students having access to food pantries, first-generation students being supported through their families' new experiences, or adult learners needing flexible course schedules to accommodate for their needs are examples of what is vulnerable in this legislative session. Any effort to reduce or cut programs in our higher education system are best informed by the constituents immediately impacted, our students and the taxpayers of Kansas. Third, it is being suggested that Kansas follow other states by dropping the DEI titles on campus to avoid conflict altogether. This concession and its possible implications are concerning. If we need to change to better serve our students and steward the resources of the state, let's do the hard work of reviewing and revising together. Yet, just as I'm asking our colleagues in the legislature to serve our state and resist the national discourse, I am compelled to also ask our institutions to do the same hard work. Build programs and hire people that will advance the well-being of all Kansans. Go back to your campus, visit with key stakeholders around the table, and make decisions that best serve our students. If you do this with an open heart and courageous spirit, you have my support. The legitimate question is, can we do better? And I believe we can. It's who we are as Kansans. We differentiate ourselves by loving our neighbor and offering kindness in times of need. If you look to your right and look to your left in this room, the person next to you has a unique story and has unique needs. It is who we are as Kansans to listen and learn and meet every individual where they are and work to meet the need that would benefit them the most. Same is true of our students. Friends, this is not the time to do less. It is not the time to reduce resources or silence those who have been addressing the real world issues we face as a country and as a state. Now is the time to lean into the work, to embrace our diversity, to ensure equality of opportunity, and engage all Kansans, including those who otherwise may have missed out on the chance to get a quality, life-changing education. We need to keep identifying and moving the obstacles out of the way for our students. And as somebody who is able to see the work you have done and are doing in this regard, I must say, I am very proud of what you have accomplished, and I am very proud to stand with you. Thank you, and that concludes my chair's report. We'll now pass it over to Blake Flanders.
Thank you, Chair Rolfe. I have no report this month.
Well, that gets us back on schedule, doesn't it? All right. Now to the Council of Faculty Senate Presidents. Dr. Von Bergen, I saw you here earlier today. Come on up.
Thank you and good afternoon. I do have a report to give. It is not very long, but I am excited about what I'm going to share this afternoon. The Senate presidents over the last few months have been working very hard. We have been collaborating together to create a set of draft criteria regarding the Kansas Board of Regents tenure track and tenured Faculty of the Year award. I think I've shared that we were making progress on this in the past. We have reached a stopping point. I am very pleased to say we are ready to submit our draft. Just as a reminder, this has been something that you all came up with about 10 years ago. It is on the KBOR website. We are very grateful for this opportunity to be able to recognize additional faculty through this award. We think the criteria that we have come up with is not only simple, but it is a worthy set of criteria that all of us can embrace. So we've collectively have worked on this. We have, all of the Regents institutions buy into this and agree with it. So I will be submitting our final draft to President Flanders either tomorrow or on Friday, and in taking the next step. So we put a lot of effort into this. Our ultimate goal this year was hopefully what we've created, you embrace it. And hopefully there will only be, if any, minor edits to put in place, because our ultimate goal is that we will have nominations then later in the spring for the board, in which they can then approve those nominations come the August retreat, and recipients can come forward at the September meeting. So you can look forward to reading that draft here in the next couple of days. The other thing is we are planning, I guess you would call it a social. We've encouraged, and all our current presidents will be present for the main meeting. We are going to have a face-to-face luncheon together. Number one, to celebrate what we think has been a successful year as Faculty Senate presidents working together. But probably more importantly, we are going to welcome and ask our the new set of Faculty Senate presidents who will work with this board next year. We want to include them to kind of motivate them, encourage them for the upcoming year. So we're looking forward to that gathering in mid-May. And that is the end of my report. I'll stand for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Student Body President Caleb Stout is across the street at the Capitol. And I told him when he came in, they have various meetings, that we would move him into the agenda. So when he arrives, we'll let him give the student report. But as Regents, we were just over across the street, getting to be with your students, leaders. And man, they're impressive. And it's wonderful to hear them telling the story of the great work you're doing. So great work, students. Thank you for doing that. Let's pass it to Regent Lane for academic affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your leadership. BASC, the Academic Affairs Committee, had a virtual meeting on January 30th, at which time we reviewed the Bachelor of Business Administration program in hospitality from Wichita State University. We also reviewed the PhD in Clinical Translational Science from the University of Kansas Medical Center. Both of these items are on your consent agenda today with our recommendation to approve. We also reviewed state universities and Washburn service area policy revisions and a request to offer a professional pilot program in the KC metro area by K-State. Both are on our discussion agenda for your consideration with Basque support. And finally, on the 30th, we reviewed the strategic plan Pillar 1 dashboard and made connections between our metrics of student success with our system-wide practices and performance agreements. Today, we reviewed the program review framework as we prepare to receive recommendations from each university later this spring. Just a reminder, recommendations are due to KBOR April 19th. Basque will review those recommendations in May, and they'll be presented to the full board in June for consideration. We also reviewed the academic year 24 through 27 performance agreements with an eye on implementation. Had a very good, robust conversation about how we can improve the implementation of those performance agreements based on our system-wide practices. We received updates from on program-to-program articulation. I want to thank Dr. Wiscombe and Heather Morgan and the community college presidents for leading this important work. The work is, the group is recommending that we begin the process of program-to-program articulation in additional areas that will be forthcoming in communication. We also received a report from Dr. Wiscombe on program-to-program articulation and the Gen Ed framework. And finally, as is our new tradition, we received significant numbers of great things happening on our campus reports from each university. And as always, they were very inspiring. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Lane. Any questions for Cindy? All right, hearing none, let's pass it over to the one and only Regent Blake Benson.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Fiscal Affairs and Audit Committee conducted its agenda call on January 30th and also met this morning. Tammy Norman, Internal Auditor for Emporia State, joined us to talk about what ESU is doing to assess enterprise risk. Cybersecurity and talent management were the top two risks noted. With new international global standards to be effective next January, the auditors and our committee will meet within this calendar year to discuss how best to apply the new standards that will change the essential conditions for the internal audit function and ensure adherence to the new standards within our system. Next today, Troy Brune of Wichita State presented on the Composite Financial Index, a benchmarking tool used in higher ed as just one indicator of financial health. It was important to note that as the CFI is heavily influenced by the university's endowment or foundation returns and does not reference the quality of academic programs nor student services, it is not the only benchmarking option that should be discussed. It's valuable, but not the only one that we should follow. Following that, Pittsburgh State, Wichita State, and the University of Kansas each presented their mid-year budget updates to the committee. The committee was pleased to hear how the state investment in the student success playbooks is having an impact on student recruitment and retention. It was pointed out that there are dangers in growing student enrollment with unwise financial aid strategies, so there are now efforts underway to examine how financial aid awards are made to best leverage those funds. As also pointed out, the delays in rolling out the FAFSA for next year will clearly hinder the university's ability to forecast enrollments and tuition revenues. Committee also approved the items on today's board consent agenda under fiscal affairs. Following that, Director Bristow reminded the committee of the work underway to finalize a space analysis planning tool that will be launched later this spring. And lastly, it was pointed out that the legislative post-audit on state university, DEI, and foreign gift and contracts will be released next Wednesday, and the community college athletics audit that was presented a week ago by LPA. And Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Regent Benson? Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your committee and your work. Before I give the governance report, I want to add one thing to the agenda. We forgot to put the legislative update in there, so we'll make that section 6, letter F. Get my letters and numbers right here. So we'll do a legislative update at the end of today's agenda. All right, governance, good news here. This morning, the governance committee met and after approving the minutes of its January meeting, reviewed a recommendation from the Student Health Insurance Advisory Committee to accept a renewal proposal from provider United Healthcare. Student resources for plan year 24 and 2025 benefits and premiums, which which reflects no change to prior year rates and coverage. Great job. Thanks, Wesley. The governance committee voted in support of the recommendation, which is on the board's agenda for consideration this afternoon. Next, the committee received a campus safety and security reports from the University of Kansas Medical Center and from the University of Kansas. Any questions on governance? All right, hearing none. We'll keep moving into the consent agenda. You guys all received the materials ahead of time. I'll listen for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
I can approve.
Got a motion to approve?
Second.
And I got a second?
Motion.
First and second? All right, we got the bookends. We got the bookends. Yeah, that's right. All right, any further discussion on consent agenda before we vote? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, and before we move into discussion and before he finds a seat, I'm going to welcome to the podium Student Vice President Caleb Stout from Kansas State University to give the report from the Student Advisory Committee.
Well, that is perfect timing. Thank you, Chair Rolfe. Thank you, Regents. It's great to see you all again. I appreciate everyone, Regents and University CEOs who were able to join us just across the street at the Capitol. As you're all well aware, today is Kansas Higher Ed Day. And so this has kind of been the, well, it's fitting to call it the Super Bowl of our terms. Going over there and meeting with all the legislators and just kind of laying out what have been some of the priorities for students. And so, as you would have saw if you were over there, it was need-based aid, deferred maintenance and capital investments, and open educational resources. And so those were the big things that students were discussing. We had about, I don't have the exact head count, but it was supposed to be 135 beforehand. Not sure how many were actually able to make it, but students from all across the state, students from different parts of the country. So it was really cool to have everyone in the Capitol in a really special time. So we appreciate everyone who was able to stop by, say hello. It was an honor to host you, and it was yeah, it's been a great day. Hopefully we have some success. But
That's great. Any questions for Caleb? All right, man. Thanks for hustling over.
Yeah,
We
thank
appreciate
you all.
all the work you're doing over across the street. Good job organized. That's a big lift.
appreciate it. Thank
The
you.
Chiefs tried to get in your way. But you said, no way, not today. So good work, buddy. Thank you, Caleb. We're proud of you. All right, on to the discussion agenda. We'll start with to receive the report from universities on research and development activities for the system. So Dr. Frisbee, will you be, or Elaine coming, Director Frisbee, will you be doctor, right? Okay. Sorry,
Wow,
I'm stumbling
okay.
all over myself.
Take it. Well, sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
thank you.
honorary.
Honorary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first item on your discussion agenda will be reports from our 3 regional universities. Last month, this is of course a continuation of last month's discussion with the 3 research institutions. So I'm just pleased here to introduce to you President Mason, who's going to introduce Melissa Hunsaker-Walburn, our interim dean at the College of Business of Fort Hays, and then Diana Kuhlman from Emporia State will take it away, and then we'll wrap with Sean Nacarado from Pittsburgh State.
Good afternoon. Regional comprehensive universities have been called the People's University in recognition of their missions to provide access to higher education and support regional economies, as well as civic and cultural life. So for a quick moment, I want to review our impact book that you all have in front of you. Page 3 depicts our mission to provide accessible and affordable educational programs. Page 4 highlights the information on our return on investment and earning power of a Fort Hays degree. Pages 5 and 6 feature applied learning, which pairs student faculty research opportunities with service to our communities. Page 11 depicts our most recent economic impact. And pages 14 through 15 provides a snapshot of how we serve our local communities. Regarding how we serve our communities, I'd like to briefly focus on the work of the Docking Institute. Our Docking Institute supported business and industry this past year through 34 projects and 5 broad public affairs activities. A sample of those projects are on this slide. And continuing. All of these activities align with our mission and designation as a regional comprehensive university and the priorities with the Kansas Board of Regents strategic plan. Regarding the chart in your board agenda, I've included a sample list of some of the research in which our faculty are engaged. A few years back, as we were working through our strategic plan, the Kansas Board of Regents asked us to develop a cybersecurity initiative to tie to Pillar 3 of the board plan on economic prosperity. So today I'd like to use our time to focus on that one initiative, our progress, our success, and our challenges. To provide the update, it's my honor to introduce our interim dean of the Robbins College of Business and Entrepreneurship, Melissa Hunsaker-Welburn.
Thank you, Dr. Mason, and thank you to the Regents for this opportunity to speak with you today. We'll move fairly quickly through these slides, so please accept my apologies that some of them are rather verbose. But I wanted you to have that information in case it's information that would be helpful for you to reference if you needed additional context. So a few background refreshers. The city initiative is housed in the Department of Informatics at Fort Hays State University. Informatics is home to our applied computing programs at graduate, undergraduate, and certificate levels. Our cybersecurity program is housed in the Department of Informatics, and it has earned the National Security Agency Center of Academic Excellence designation in the area of cyber defense. We were the first institution in the system to have that designation, which we've had since 2009. And part of that redesignation process is continuing to demonstrate outreach and educational awareness in communities and engagement. So it was quite natural for us when we developed the city concept to imagine how we could leverage our strengths to produce impact in our communities and the state of Kansas economy generally. And so we identified the problem well established in the literature that small business, I'm going to cruise through these slides. I'll boil it down for you. Small business is especially vulnerable. They're attacked with great frequency, and their ability to be prepared for those attacks and to remain viable and survive attacks is lower than larger corporations. So we've approached the concept of city and how we've stood it up to reflect that we have a number of small businesses and that we can do more as an institution through a program like this to improve their security posture, help them better prepare and evaluate their risk management decisions so that we help our small businesses especially be better prepared than they are currently. So with an opportunity to make an impact, we developed a micro internship framework that is mapped to curriculum and skills. So through the micro internship program, and this is just a sampling of the sorts of things that students do in these scope-based micro internships. These map not only to our courses to help us evaluate that a student is adequately and appropriately prepared for the micro internship that we would like to deploy them in, but it also helps us ensure that this outreach maps to that NSA curriculum as well. So all of this mapping work was done about this time last year, and it helped us prepare to go into the work of moving the mapping and the concept into workflows and a system. So we recognized very early on that it was going to be very, very important as businesses came to us and had their needs assessed, and we undertook that work, for us to be sure that, that students were appropriately prepared, but that we also had efficient processes to track those projects, their completion, and also to have an established feedback loop at the conclusion of the micro internship so that we could understand if we needed to pivot or if we were getting it right or if we were getting it wrong. So last spring, I'm pleased to say that our own capstone students in our undergraduate space built that workflow. And they've designed it from start to prototype. And so we have now a system that matches students, records their skills, and aligns them with business micro internships that they are appropriately qualified to do. So how are we doing? We've made a lot of progress. We have partnered with the Docking Institute to study small business perceptions and behaviors in Kansas. We have an abundance of literature, but not a lot of business that really focuses in on our small business constituency that we're interested in improving. So I think the study will probably launch next week. We're anxious to better understand businesses. We did complete our first cohort of micro internships this fall, a small but mighty cohort of 3 students, 3 businesses, and 3 unique micro internships. But anything you do with the beta, you do like to test it. And I'm quite grateful that we took that even smaller scale approach than we initially thought we would take. Because one thing that we've come to realize is that there's an undeniable trust dynamic at the business level. And so by doing a very, very small beta test and pilot program this fall, we were able to identify some of our weak spots and some things that we needed to address. Grateful that we're able to make those controls and not at the expense of building that foundational trust with our business community. We've also started construction in Hammond Hall. We'll be excited to show that to you in April. And so we have the city space actually built out now. And in terms of characterizing those businesses, we are finding that there is a good fit with what we're doing and the comfort level of that particular sector with our students in in the micro internship framework. And that is service-oriented businesses with a single point of sale. So think hair salons, tire shops, small grocery stores. Those at this point characterize the types of business that we seem to generate the most interest in. Currently, as we roll into the spring, we have 10 students signed up to do micro internships through the city initiative and 4 businesses, which leads me to our challenges. We don't have enough businesses signing up. We think that this is likely linked a bit to the challenges that we've experienced in recruiting a full-time director for the city initiative. We also know that part of what we need to do is look at how to build our brand more widely with more intentionality given to a marketing strategy. So while some of those kinds of things have been under the purview of the full-time director, we're looking at whether we can achieve momentum while we continue our search by using some consultancy services for some of those kinds of things to make sure we keep building momentum. Again, without having a full-time director, we have had some delays. And so one of the challenges right now, while we've been especially focused on this micro internship piece and the students and making that connection directly to the businesses that support our economy, we'll be very excited to develop the venture side of this. With construction complete, we have capacity for 3 or 4 tech or security-oriented businesses to come in and have an accelerator or an incubator type of business experience. And so, but all of that also requires some additional policy development and workflow. And so we'll be excited when we can take on that additional layer of the city initiative and have that available to recruit. With that, I would be glad to have any questions. I guess I did miss a slide. Moving forward, we are evaluating, if we're having the struggles with recruitment, we've evaluated that perhaps what we're trying to the way we design the proposal and the way we design the model, perhaps we need to assess the role of the director and see if we can make some resource adjustments and allocations to shift some things around, so that this initiative does have a full-time champion. One of the things that really excites us is the potential of the affiliation. We are looking at ways, while we mapped our own curriculum, an additional phase of this is mapping the affiliate schools' curriculums into our micro internship to imagine how we can provide comparable micro internship opportunities for students in that space, which also will build pathways, we hope, to our cybersecurity program as well, so that we can continue to feed that talent pipeline in these areas of high demand. So with that, let's conclude my remarks, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We got questions
May I have
or comments?
I do have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for presentation, and I enjoyed the micro internship activity. I just have a suggestion that if you probably consider working with an SBA, local SBA, and bringing them on board, that would be a good interjunction between the businesses, small businesses, and the university efforts to reach to them. And then what we did is to have a free session and educate them as to what we are trying to provide. That may change that notion of trying to open up their trust doors to.
Yes, and we've started doing a little bit of that. Last fall, the SBA hosted a cybersecurity forum or workshop, and our faculty staffed it and did a great deal to promote this. So we'll continue to look forward to building upon that, building upon the SBDC model and their outreach. So it's definitely something that we appreciate keeping in mind as we continue to evolve our strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Wonderful presentation. Thank you. Who's next? All right, Emporia State.
Good afternoon and greetings from President Hush, who is across the street in the Capitol building today. So you get me. So I want to thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. I am Diana Kuhlman, for those of you who don't know me, as Senior Vice President for University Planning and K-Board Relations. And I'm going to just talk briefly about Emporia State University's research and development outreach activities and how we see them supporting ESU's plan for Pillar 3 of the board's strategic plan. This is a slide that we've been using with our audiences to focus on the fact that as a regional comprehensive institution, our primary focus is instruction. And we have strike zone programs that feed into workforce shortages such as teacher education, business cybersecurity, nursing and health sciences. And you're going to hear a little bit more about how we also support those instructional programs with our research activities. So to enhance our primary mission of instruction, we feel very strongly and have really focused on providing opportunities for students to develop a spirit of inquiry and also that longing to pursue discovery by offering them faculty mentored research opportunities that go along with their instructional programs. We have a variety of grant funding. As you can see on the screen there, some of our major funding sources are both federal, state, and also local. A significant number of our projects we do in collaboration with other institutions. For instance, the KMBRI, the lead institution on that is the University of Kansas Medical Center. There are 9 institutions who participate in that. Variety of sources for the funding. Emporia State has been in that program for 24 years, bringing in over $2.8 million. Over that time, on the average, we can help at least 5 faculty and 10 undergraduate students pursue research opportunities that will hopefully encourage them to go on to careers in the biomedical sciences. And a nice thing about that is that about 80% of them do go into either graduate school or medical school or some other professional school. And a large majority, there's over 2/3 of those, are in the state of Kansas. NASA is a collaborative with Wichita State University. It provides opportunities for our students for research and scholarship. One of our newer collaborations is also with Wichita State with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This is a newer grant that we received through Wichita State, and it gives our students an opportunity to study cattle grazing on CRP grasslands, which is an important topic in the state of Kansas. It provides both graduate and undergraduate research, travel and equipment for their research. The chart in your agenda that shows the amount that the National Science Foundation characterizes as research and development, most of that money is in our life and biological sciences, but we also have some projects in exercise science and computer systems. We also have a multitude of research opportunities that also have an outreach component to them. So our main goal in here is to turn around that declining college going rate for our students and get them interested and build that pipeline for students who will go into the STEM fields. So we've got a couple centers on here that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides. I just want to hit on a couple of these other opportunities. Studio E is a privately funded student advertising collective that gives students an opportunity to work with small businesses, startups, and not-for-profits to create advertising and marketing for them. So anybody who might be going into graphic design or marketing or public relations has an opportunity to learn about market research and social media content, website development, taglines, and the like. And the picture down here in the lower right hand is from the Emporia Chamber of Commerce's annual meeting that was sponsored by our CyRock Center, our Cybersecurity Center, but it features one of the clients that Studio E worked with, Glimpse Drone Services, and you're going to see another picture here in a little bit with a student showcasing a drone. Our Teachers College also has some outreach and research tied to that. Over the last 5 years, we've received 3 very large grants in the counselor ed area that has allowed us to certify over 50 rehabilitation counselors and 35 vocational rehabilitation counselors. And so they've been able to fill in some crucial gaps in their respective fields, and that has been primarily in the Midwest. Most recently, we've received a grant from the Department of Education that helps Kansas City area graduate students complete either an autism certificate or a social and emotional learning certificate through ESU. That program just started last summer. The students have 5 semesters to complete, and we have over 40 students between those 2 certificate programs. We also have our Small Business Development Center, as most of the campuses do, which we're very proud of. Our SBDC serves 11 counties. In this most recent year, they have created or retained over 300 jobs and have helped over 10 businesses start up with access to over $3.5 million of capital. So let's talk about PayRock, as it's affectionately called, the Profit Aquatic Research and Outreach Center. This is a facility that we opened in 2021. It is primarily funded through private gifts and grants. The building itself is beautiful. It sits right on the edge of King Lake. Sadly, earlier this month, the namesake for the building, Dr. Carl Profit, who served Emporia State for 37 years on our faculty, did pass, but he left a wonderful legacy both to the university and our students. And we're proud of one of his students is Representative Mark Schreiber. So we tout that. This is just a quick map. It's a unique location for this center. So south of this is 0 point right there. This is the campus proper. This is the interstate. And on the other side of the interstate, right there, is the PayRock Center. It sits right on the edge of King Lake, as I explained. But all this area around it, you'll see the Neosho Rivers here, Campus Woods here. There's a new campus prayer area. We put in a trail that was privately funded that allows more research opportunities for our students, as well as access by the community as a walking trail. So it really sets this facility apart and really expands the opportunities and amplifies the work that's being done there. Speaking of King Lake, we have recently partnered in the last couple of years with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. King Lake is now part of their Community Fisheries Assistance Program, which means they help us to maintain and stock the lake. Most recently, they stocked it with rainbow trout this last winter. So we see people along the edge fishing, which is really nice that the community can participate in that. The nice thing though is that for our students, it also gives them some real life experience in managing that lake and making improvements. So in that building, we do a variety of things. We do research, prairie reconstruction studies around the perimeter, as I showed you earlier. And then some of our outreach programs that reach down to our pre-K up through our high school students include Science Saturdays, pre-K science story time, and science camps. Real quickly here, these are not the fish that were stocked by the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. That is a real experiment. However, it's not out of King Lake. Right here are the size of the fish that come out of King Lake for research by our students. So I just had to throw that in there. But this center has given us an opportunity to build new relationships and collaborations with a multitude of entities across the state, including other higher education institutions and agencies such as the Kansas Water Office, the Kansas chapter of American Fisheries, the Nature Center, Kansas Water Institute, and several others. When we opened this building in 2021, in the spring, for that first 6 months, we had about 1,200 visitors through that building that participated in our programs. In 2023, we had over 3,100. So we have just really seen the activities in this building take off and be well received by our community as well as our students. And what's really cool about some of these things like the Science Saturdays and the pre-K and the science camps is that it gives our students some real opportunities to build their leadership. For instance, the pre-K science story time, we have students who've done the research and created and delivered those programs. In the science camps, there's some opportunities for some micro internships that help our students really learn how to do on-hands activities and actually be in front of others and lead. So it's a great space. It has a lot of different activities. It's even been used for meetings of some of the entities that serve in the natural resources area. So we are quite proud of this, as well as our students like to use it for their events too. Our newest center that combines research and outreach is what we fondly call CyROC, Cybersecurity Research and Outreach Center. This is under the School of Business and Technology. We just opened this space with a ribbon cutting in January. This started with an application for a federal grant back in the summer of 2021. And then last year we received ongoing operations funding from the state of Kansas, which we are very appreciative of. So like PayRock, it has a combination of academic programming, research, community awareness, and will give us an opportunity to build out some strategic partnerships. So there's multiple, even though the center just opened, the curriculum mapping is still being done to lead to various certifications. We have already begun our outreach programs, with the largest one being last October, when we had over 300 area students on our campus for what was labeled CyberCon. They listened to speakers both from private firms, virtual reality, 3D printers. They heard some discussions from our esports team as well as a student panel. So what lies ahead for CyROC? The next big step is to solidify some strategic partnerships that we have in the pipeline, and those strategic partnerships would help those entities protect their critical infrastructure. We're working with industries like healthcare, energy, agriculture, and other community economic development organizations. Our long-term goal for CyROC is to build this space out in how we're imagining it and develop these partnerships and create some real game-changing partnerships that will provide our graduates with gainful employment in the cybersecurity field, provide our current students with opportunities to do in-class projects, research projects with faculty, as well as participate in internships. And this picture of this smiling young man on the right-hand side of your screen was doing a drone demonstration. I don't know if you can see the drone in the picture there during, again, the Chamber's annual meeting. That was on our campus. So to wrap it up today, ESU has a very strong commitment to collaborative research activities for our students that goes alongside and just elevates their instructional and public service experience. And in ESU's plan for Pillar 3 of the board's strategic plan, we touch on things like focus of work around cybersecurity and biological sciences, working with other universities on grant opportunities. And another thing that I haven't yet mentioned was trying to provide increased support for government research. And we did that most recently by restructuring the Research and Grants Office and moving a position out of our Teachers College over to Research and Grants to have a little bit more reach, to reach out to faculty and try to link their interests to grant opportunities. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Any questions, comments? All right, great report. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
And Pittsburgh State University. Go Gorillas.
Okay, so I have a question about those fish that we saw. So CyRock has to be working with AI to digitally enhance those fish. That's what I need in some of my photos, right? Well, thanks, Mr. Chair, board members today. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nacarado, who's going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing around economic development, research, community engagement. Really proud to represent a university that really has this as part of our DNA. We're a micropolitan institution, so serving a rural regional mission. But I think you're gonna find that I guess we have Gus up there. We're kind of punching above our weight in terms of the work that Dr. Nacarado and his team are doing to support our faculty. So without further ado, I think to introduce Sean, some of you know him. He's probably the best Scrabble player I know, because we talk about our pillar alignment work for the board, but also the work we do within the community and the state as a triple word score. And so Sean represents a division that's recently developing around this economic community engagement and looking for partners wherever we can find them that allow us to build those types of outcomes for our state, our region, and certainly the campus and the city that we reside in. So Dr. Nacarado, take it away.
Thanks, Dan. Funny thing is I don't ever play actual Scrabble. I don't know the last time I did, so that's a great compliment. So that bring the bar down a little bit. I wanted to mention, I think the last time that I had the opportunity to be before you, it was on Block 22, and it was my birthday, and it was in Hayes, Kansas. And what no one knows, though, is that I had just split my pants right before I came up to the microphone. So I've set the bar for myself pretty low on that. So as long as I can get over that right now, I'm good. And if it happens during the presentation, everything else would have gone wrong too. Well, everybody knows now. I'm managing expectations. So it is my pleasure and my honor to be here on behalf of Pittsburgh State University. I appreciate the kind words from President Shipp. The work that we're doing is truly mission work. This is the place that I grew up. It's where I came back to raise our family. It means a lot to me. And it's where my great-grandfather immigrated to at 21 years old in 1901. So I feel a big responsibility to ensure that because of those who dug under the dirt, we ensure that what is built above it is recognized that it's on their shoulders and that they're the ones that drive us. So I'm just in some ways getting the chance to modernize the things that has always been Pittsburgh, has always been Pittsburgh State. We ask ourselves two easy, I mean, it might not be easy questions, but there are two questions at the end of the day, I think, that we're asking ourselves as we grow and build. And those are, what does it do for our students and what does it do for our community? And if we have alignment in those things, we know that we're in the right path. And that might be too simplistic, but at the end of the day, that's what we're there for. So our goal is to become a regional research university. You can look at the Carnegie classifications and whatever that means. I mean, right now we're already within the range on the number of dollars that are being spent from a research expenditure standpoint, but we're not quite there with regard to producing doctoral degrees. Setting aside the Carnegie classification, I think the most important thing for us is to really embrace what I think was mentioned earlier about the role of comprehensive regional institutions and how we redefine that in being the workhorses for the American dream. That truly is what we can do and what we provide for the state and for the nation. Growing the research enterprise will help us to keep tuition affordable, have access, and also to enhance the experience of our students. This year, we've had the opportunity to launch into a redesign and a redevelopment and development of a new division. Some of this is a reorganization of work that I've had the opportunity to be a part of over the last over a decade. I've been at the institution for 17 years. Over the last little bit more than a decade, really working in economic and community development and in research. We didn't actually label it, and we had not really embraced our historic mission in research until the last few years. And then with the arrival of President Shipp, we've really taken the lid off of where we can go with that. We're creating a new division, focusing on translational research. I want to emphasize that the work that we've always done, going back to by doing learn, has been focused on how does this impact and apply to our community, to our region, and how does it help our students to be community builders. So we're not focusing here on a significant change toward a significant basic research agenda. We have some of that, of course, but we're really looking at translational. How does it apply and help our communities? How does it align with workforce development? How are we ensuring that we have a constant feedback loop? My hope is that we're building the team that can constantly be giving the feedback to the academy on degree development, on research opportunities, but that also is doing that through our work in our communities and in our economy. That should inform alignment. And then finally, how this all works together for economic prosperity in the plan that we're developing in that regard. We have 4 historic strengths that we could point to. And as our team has been assessing how we build this new infrastructure and division and impact, you build off of strengths. And so we have a historic strength, the College of Education. I think as many of the folks know in here with the history, that we were originally we came from Emporia State. Originally, we were an auxiliary of Emporia State, and that was because we needed workforce in education. We needed more workforce to populate the schools. That's the same thing we need to do now, and we are committed to that in a new way. Our College of Technology, of course, leads the state in a lot of respects, and our students are really sought after. But again, it's an area we have not done a significant amount of research work. The Tyler Research Center in NEMA, which is probably the thing that distinguishes us the most in our ability to be able to have the confidence that we will be able to build a significant impact research apparatus. I'll talk a little bit more in detail here shortly about NEMA, but that has been the crown jewel and what has helped to drive. That has always been rooted in our historic strength in plastics as well, but we've been able to also develop more in materials and polymers. And finally, our Kels College of Business, which of course is a centerpiece of our Guerrilla Rising expansion of Block 22, but it's an area where we can continue to leverage. 4 areas that we've identified to grow upon. Connected to the College of Education predominantly, of course, is reading science. And we are very excited that the light of day and the sunshine is starting to show upon David Herford and his team, who for 30 years, yes, I'll do that too, for 30 years have been helping Kansas families and students to overcome what are some institutional challenges within the education system in the state that produces 40+% of students that graduate high school that don't have comprehension. But I'm sure Regent Lane will talk in more detail about that later. We are so excited to be able to help lead on reading. This is the thing that we believe, because of our historic strength. Right now, that Center for Reading has been serving about 500 families per year. We want to be able to expand that scope, and we want to be part of the solution there. And so very excited to build in that. And as part of that, we are launching the literacy, I just about screwed up the name, Literacy Training and Research Institute, of which the Center for Reading is the centerpiece of our outreach efforts. Emerging technologies and advanced manufacturing. Last year, we were fortunate that the legislature has invested $2 million per year in Pittsburgh State University to launch a research area in emerging technologies and advanced manufacturing. The most significant piece that we're working on there right now is the manufacturing prove-out facility, which will be the next addition to our research park. Right now, we have about $12 million either committed or in hand from state, federal, and private sources. We anticipate that that project could be as much as $20 million. Some of it may have to be phased depending on where we're at on the funding. Materials science, of course, the biggest expression of that being NEMA, our National Institute for Materials Advancement. And then finally, micropolitan economics. I think many of you know that we have one of the preeminent micropolitan economists in the country at Pittsburgh State University. He has for some time been leading a business education research center. We're looking to expand that, working out final details with the College of Business on a significant investment there that we could launch Kansas Micropolitan Institute. Our intent would be to serve all 17 micropolitan communities in the state with what Dr. Davidson has been able to do in Pittsburgh with his micropolitan report. Want to highlight NEMA because as I mentioned, NEMA, our National Institute for Materials Advancement, is probably the crown jewel. It's a place where, honestly, at the end of the day, I've had the most, my team and I've had the most opportunity through the years to work and grow. We're now looking at what we've done with NEMA to see how we apply the same principles and organizational structure to the university more broadly. So NEMA, you see the alignment there. Again, I use that word a lot. Alignment is the key. We're looking, how do we align academics with research and development and prototyping and testing? And that's what you're seeing, that is the expression with the prove out facility, et cetera, et cetera. What our hope is that what we're building is that virtuous cycle and continuous feedback loop. Here is where I can point to the most numbers. I mean, the truth of the matter is that we have been behind enough on our focus in research that we're even cobbling together data right now and getting them into the best sort of ways and organizational structures, offices, who's in charge of what. But I think we can highlight what has happened with NEMA. And I think that the success that we have had there, so long as we continue to maintain the alignment that we need, we can see similar success in other areas. You see, most significantly, two places I want to really focus. One is on the number of students. And a big chunk of this, I have to credit Dr. Ram Gupta. He's our lead scientist. He's now Associate Vice President for Research Support and Advancement. He is really the most responsible for growing this. From about 10 students in 2020 to last year, we had over 60 students, graduate students, doing research at the Tyler Research Center for NEMA. Those students wouldn't be at Pittsburgh State but for that research they're doing. We right now have students who already have masters and PhDs coming back so that they can study with Dr. Gupta. It's a pretty amazing, it's when you have a top 2% scientist in the world, that is a draw and that is helpful. I asked him the other day, we were reviewing some resumes and some really great candidates. I said, wow, where do you compare on the number of citations? He's like, well, I've got about 450 peer-reviewed journal articles. And for someone at a Division II school to be able to say that and be in the top 2% of those in the country is amazing. I'm also excited to say, while it is not yet finalized, we believe we're in final negotiations on 2 additional top 2% scientists in the world. One who has done collaboration work with Dr. Gupta from India, the other who is in the United States now, but has done some significant work with DoD. So we're looking at how we align proper. So, those who don't know much about polymers and plastics, like myself, you think, oh, well, anybody's a plastics or polymers researcher. Well, there are all kinds of different specialties you can imagine. So as we grow, we've got to make sure that we're doing strategic staffing in that regard as well. I mentioned the emerging research and development park. You'll see here where the current Tyler Research Center proper, which houses NEMA, where it is located. Directly adjacent is where we intend to build the prove-out facility, where we can help from design development all the way through market run productions that can help hopefully to expedite the amount, shorten the amount of time to get products to market and businesses launched. Third thing you'll see on there, of course, is the planned site for what we hope will be the new KBI facility. This is a partnership that really matters. Again, this is showing that alignment, that center of the Venn diagram. We are in an area of Kansas that it's something we don't like to talk about, and you don't want to put it on your Chamber of Commerce tourism things, right? But we have a significant challenge with drug trafficking, human trafficking, particularly when you get into fentanyl, the concern of the corridor there. The statistic that really shocked me the other day that I had heard and confirmed was that the 11th Judicial District, which covers Crawford, Cherokee, and Labette County, it's the only judicial district in the entire country where every county within that district is a high traffic area. That's why we need the KBI in Southeast Kansas. And that's why if we can align with them degree programming and otherwise so that we can be doing stackable certificates, micro-credentialing, and everything from forensic chemistry to forensic nursing and other degree program development that can support our criminal justice programs as well as emergency management. I mentioned that we have been hard at work this last year in envisioning and growing a new sort of overarching structure over the Center for Reading that could focus in addition on the research side, as well as the public policy development side. We're excited about where we're at on this, the new LTR Institute, which will then also, what our hope is with the Blueprint for Literacy structure, that we can work particularly with partners such as the Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, who I'm hoping we shortly will be having a full-fledged partnership conversation with, that we can help to deliver and build an apparatus in this state where no child is outside of an hour of a reading center where they can get support and help. That would be the goal for our work in that way. mentioning, so moving on to community and university engagement. This really encapsulates the area of what I mentioned with micropolitan economic development. It's the other area where we've had some history and some work, success upon which we can build. We have over the past decade built what we affectionately call the Pittsburgh model in Pittsburgh, and that has been through Regent Benson's work at the chamber, as well as Darren Hall and Jay Byers at the city, that we have a three-way collaboration on economic development in the city of Pittsburgh. So instead of a traditional role where you would just hire a city employee as economic development director, this has evolved into this three-way work wherein those anchor institutions within the city are working together. And honestly, you can't tell whose table you're even at most of the time. We're all there for Pittsburgh, and pure and simple. And so the work that we've done, we've started tracking, again, because of Dr. Davidson. He has helped us to track data and metrics that can help us understand, are those economic development policies and interventions we're doing successful? So you look here over the last decade, keep in mind that I mentioned that other statistic about the 11th Judicial District, and you all know about the challenges economically Southeast Kansas has had. Despite all of that, in the last decade, through the work that we've done together with the chamber and the city, our economic development efforts have produced almost $600 million in capital investment in 10 years in a town of 20-some thousand. And if you look at how spread out that portfolio is, it's not just one industry, which is one of the other hallmarks we believe of building a comprehensive and resilient economy. We've also added over 1,700 new jobs during that same period of time. Here's a couple other metrics that we really have been tracking. One of those is on community wealth. And you see we've had over the past, that same period of time, well, actually since 2015, we've had a growth of $230 million in local bank deposits. We also now have the highest average FICO scores that we've ever had as a community. We've reduced poverty by 10%, increased middle class by 10%. And you see there from 21 to 22, we had the 15th highest in the state growth in median wages. So what I would say is that the work that we're doing together seems to be producing some fruit. And we are very proud of that work that we're doing together. Block 22, which I think all of you have been there. I don't even know at the time we understood the foundation that we were building to build upon. We knew it was the right thing at the right time, and it could help honestly lead our institution into where it needed to go into the future. That project, these are a few key numbers. Dr. Davidson just completed an economic impact report for us, partially in our efforts to sell to the community Guerrilla Rising's impact anticipated. You see there that since or because of, we'll put it this way, but for Block 22, there would not be 35 of those companies that were assisted. 516 jobs created, $19.2 million in labor income, $83 million every 2 years in community gross domestic product impact. Total of $1.4 million every year is being generated back to the city of Pittsburgh, who originally invested $1.8 million. So they're getting a pretty good return on their investment there. And to the state, because of Block 22, there's $2.46 million in additional tax revenue to the state. So if you think about in the city of Pittsburgh, that $600 million almost in capital investment, that came with less than 7 cents on the dollar of investment from the city of Pittsburgh. So if you could throw a nickel in and get a dollar, you're probably going to do that every time. So I feel like we've all managed to work out a partnership wherein as many times as we can throw in nickels and get out dollars, then we're going to be doing that. Building upon the success of Block 22 and the expansion of the Block 22 Innovation District, we have Guerrilla Rising. We're, of course, very excited about, the centerpiece of which will be our College of Business, our Kels College of Business moving downtown, which will further create the synergy with the Foundry, our small business development support efforts, as well as the efforts in growing an entrepreneurship program there at downtown. End of the day, this, of course, will be a more than $60 million investment in downtown. Block 22 was a $20 million investment in downtown, so you can imagine that impact and what that'll mean. I think one of the most important things, and I'm stealing President Shipp's line, but from one of the hearings last week, but we're working very hard to ensure that our institution is a propeller for economic and community betterment and success, and not a crater. And I think that that is the decision that we are going to be faced with as a state is, do we want propellers or do we want craters? Because you're going to get one or the other, either way. So at that, I'll stand for any questions.
Great presentation. Questions or comments? Good work, Pitt State. Good work, Blake Benson. No, you're part of all of that too. Yeah. Team Pitt. All right. This seems like a great place for a break. So it is 3:11. We'll gavel back in at 3:20. 3:20. Thank you. I was made aware of during the break, the incident at the Chiefs parade. You didn't know, it sounds like there was a shooting there and several people involved, and so want to make sure everybody knew about that so they can direct their prayers that way and hold them in your heart as we wait to learn more. So. All right, we're now going to move to academic affairs. We have state universities and Washburn University Service Area Policy Revisions. I think we have Carla coming to the podium. Carla?
The policy that I'm bringing before you today, actually, it starts on page 71, but the changes are at the bottom of page 72. The changes stem from a change in the state statute for the Johnson County Educational Research Authority Act. I'd like to thank Gage, who did most of the work on this. So we aligned our policy with the state statute, but then we also made some other changes into section F and E. So section E is just the service areas. The universities get permission from each other to go into the other areas to offer face-to-face courses. Section F is the Kansas City metropolitan area, and that requires board approval to offer courses in those two counties. And so again, the changes are at the bottom. It affects K-State. Kansas State University at their Olathe campus, we're able to offer courses and programs in animal health and food safety. That has been expanded by the change in the state statute. So we changed our policy to align with that. And I stand for questions.
Any questions for Carla? Anybody? Okay, if not, I'll listen for a motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Thank you, Regent Benson. Do I have a second? Oh, man, that was a tie right there. I'll let whoever's doing the minutes figure that one out. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Are you staying up, Carla? Do the act on request of approval of off-campus face-to-face programs in the Kansas City Metro for Kansas State University.
And they are requesting to offer the Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical Technology Professional Pilot. The reason this requires board approval is because some of the courses will be offered at the Johnson County Airport. So that part of it requires board approval. It's already been approved by JCERT. The program has been approved, but some of the courses, which are normally taught at the Salina campus, are actually going to be taught at the airport, the New Century Airport in Johnson County, Gardner. And I believe Michael Banks, the interim associate dean at the Olathe campus, is online if we have any specific questions about the program.
Any questions from the board? Thanks for joining us virtually. Any questions? All right, hearing none, I would look for a motion to approve. A motion, do I got a second? All right, moving seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Carla, you are 2 for 2. That's not too bad. All right, I'm excited about this one. The one and only Regent Lane, talking about literacy education.
Thank you very much. Board, you should have at your place a copy of the blueprint on literacy. I'm going to take you back a little bit. 2 years ago, we asked our deans of our colleges of education to form a educator workforce task force. And if you'll recall, they brought back a series of recommendations. There were 18 in total, of which literacy was one. And then at our request, Dr. Flanders elevated the literacy strategy to being one of the first ones that we would pursue in those recommendations. I have to tell you that our deans have been remarkable in their forward thinking, in their ability to bring their faculties together to really think about how we improve our work and talent development for our future educators. So this plan is a result of collaboration across our group, but also with legislators and with members of the Pittsburgh State team. You heard them talk about their emphasis on literacy. And actually, they began the work there at Pitt State on developing a blueprint that they then shared. And thank you, Chair, for allowing me to engage in that work. This directly ties to our current goal, our goal number 4, which is about elevating best practices in literacy instruction and to prepare our graduates so they can be experts in the science of reading. So as we go through this, I'm just going to hit the high points and then would stand for questions and then would also encourage us, if the body desires, to make a motion to endorse and approve this blueprint. But as you think about it, I'd like you to think about what this means for the talent pipeline in Kansas and our obligation to educate future educators, and then also what it means for all Kansans, in particular our young people who are learning to read. So page 1 is on the screen here. It gives the background. You know the background well. Donna Ginther's report reminding us that there are 54,000 new jobs on the horizon in Kansas, 80% of which are going to require a bachelor's degree or higher. More and more jobs in our state and across the nation are requiring high-skilled workers. And in that second paragraph, you'll see that we have work to do in that area when 67% of Kansas students are reading at the basic level on the Kansas assessment, and 60% of our fourth graders are performing at the basic level on the National Assessment of Education Progress. We're not alone in this challenge. It's a challenge across the nation. And you'll see that we called out Mississippi, New Mexico, and New York, because those are example states that have aligned their workforce and economic development initiatives to focus on literacy. And we are very fortunate in Kansas. We have highly talented educators, very dedicated to our children. What this blueprint suggests is that we need to prepare them with additional tools for more success. So if you'll go to the second page, Steve, if you'll scroll down, the blueprint identifies the work that we had, the deans lead, and you'll recall that last year, within 3 months, they turned around a program-to-program articulation for a universal elementary education license degree and transfer in partnership with our community colleges. And they were in the process of developing a comprehensive literacy plan so that at our 6 state institutions and Washburn, that we would have highly aligned programs focused on the science of reading. So we have an opportunity here now to accelerate our progress and accelerate with the support of our legislative body and in support of the State Board of Education's work. I just read a tweet that they today just announced that they are requiring the implementation of the science of reading across all K-12 schools in Kansas, and we'll be doing some work on licensure. So we're really excited to see that. At the bottom of the page, you'll see our vision, which is to advance a highly skilled and educated citizenry. And we have 2 goals. One is that 100% of our Kansas elementary teacher workforce achieve a micro-credential that will be issued by our universities in the science of reading and structured literacy by the year 2030. Now, let me put an asterisk here. The state board is also now planning to implement a new assessment from the ETS. It's called the Praxis Assessment, specifically in reading, that will require all current teachers in service to receive that endorsement to be relicensed. So we're working with them to achieve that 100% goal. And that our aspiration is that 85% of our Kansas fourth graders are reading at the basic level on those high stake exams. The rest of the plan organizes the how we get to this. And you'll see on page 3 that we have 2 approaches that involve statutory alignment and then regulatory alignment. I won't go through those, but those are key actions that we're asking first on the statutory for our legislative partners to develop a bill that designates the science of reading as the Tier 1 literacy methodology in our state and prohibits any discredited methodologies. In reading, the science evolves, and we now know what we were teaching teachers to do 10 years ago some of those things were not effective, and frankly, some we've learned are counterproductive. So the idea behind that is that we eliminate those from our teacher ed programs, and the deans have done a good job to do that. The second approach of the regulatory framework is really about our partnership with the State Board of Education and the things that we will do together to advance this, designating different pathways to achieve a micro-credential in the science of reading, ensuring that there are professional learning systems across the state for teachers who are currently in the classroom, as well as those emerging teacher candidates so they can learn and grow, to track training. So we know what teachers in Kansas have certification, are experts in the science of reading, and identify those that we can support with more resources. On the next page, approach 3 really reflects the work that our deans have been leading. It's about aligning our curriculum, being very transparent with our curriculum in terms of elementary education and where we are teaching the science of reading, and then leads to a performance-based micro-credential where the pre-service teachers actually, once they have the knowledge, can then come together and demonstrate their competence in delivering literacy instruction in a highly effective way in a safe environment. And that will result in that micro-credential. I think that's really exciting work, and I just want to highlight for you the timelines here. Our deans have been leading this work so that they will have 2 capstone courses, except they asked me not to call them now, right? Okay, let me shape my language. 2 performance-based classes within their education programs that result in that credential by August. So they're going to be standing that up by August of this year, which is just incredible work. We're grateful. Approach 4 talks about assessments. These are not the high stakes assessments like the Kansas assessment or the NAEP. These are assessment tools that we want to make sure that our teachers have in their hands so they can diagnose reading, so they can look at progress that's being made. We call those formatives. And then they also have some summative measures. So working on identifying what are the best assessments available in the nation, or even developing assessments that will help us move that forward. On the next page, approach 5 speaks to centers of excellence in reading. You heard about the power of the Center for Reading out of Pittsburgh State. And we also have a great community partner, Phillips Fundamental Learning Center, doing similar work. What this proposal is that we receive funding to add 6 additional centers of excellence in reading that will be run by the universities, specifically the colleges of education, located regionally throughout the state, so that they can do 2 things. They can learn from the expertise of David Hertford's team on the assessment and diagnosis end. They can also be places where teachers can come get development, where families can come, and so it's both assessment and instruction. And we also see this as a great resource to help school districts across our state have experts that can be available to coach and help grow our practices in literacy. The centers will also have a simulation training lab in them. We want to pilot that. You remember when we were at KU at our campus visit and we saw the simulation labs, and I blurted out, this is how we should be teaching teachers reading. Well, the idea is to create a simulation lab where our pre-service teachers can come and be coached along the way on the intricacies of literacy instruction with real children, and a master teacher there coaching along the way. So we're excited about that piece. Approach 6 speaks to the body that we are recommending being responsible for carrying this forward. So we have an advisory committee made up of our partners identified by the governor, by legislators, by state board, K-Board, literacy experts, and a director of literacy we're recommending be hired by President Flanders to be here at K-Board that oversees all of this entire project. So we'll have a director of literacy to guide this work forward. The final page is has our estimated cost and our budget ask. The governor has seen this. She's very excited about it. We have legislative champions that are very excited about it. So we believe this will have great success moving forward. So be glad to answer any questions, clarity, and certainly we'll listen for a motion.
Yes, Dr. Lane, thank you. You know, you do great work. It was just a month ago, we were sitting, looking at our priorities, and we tasked you with stepping on the gas pedal on this, and you took us seriously. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the change.
We also know that, you know, we run a legislative process on asks and for the session, but every once in a while we need to be malleable in that. And I certainly am supportive of, a motion today that would, in fact, I'll make that motion that I'll move that we accept this into our legislative agenda and budget request and support, this blueprint, for literacy, on a move forward basis. Is there a second?
I would second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anybody else want to make comments? Leave that open.
Yes, Chair Rolfe. I would just like to say that thank you certainly to Regent Lane, the deans of the universities. This really is critical work, and I appreciate the dedication, the thoughtfulness, and the expertise that has gone into that. And I do think that we should fully support this blueprint for literacy because it will be critical, I think, to advancing all of the people in Kansas. And so I do think it's great work. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just clearly really good work and it's going to impact a number of Kansans. And I'd also like to thank a former regent, Ed McKechnie, for helping with this work, and I'll call it a catalyst or a disruptor.
Right.
And certainly did good work on this as well.
I want to reiterate that micro-credentials are good ways to keep up with what's happening in education that we got through the universities. It's a good base and foundation, and having these embedded micro-credentials to update is a fantastic idea. So very happy to see this. I do want to suggest it's great to see the improvement of fourth graders achieving 85% on the basics, but maybe that should be the minimum and then try to achieve 100% on it.
I appreciate that push, Regent Prohaska. On this particular assessment, I don't know that we would get to 100, but we can certainly get to 85 to 90, and so that's a good push. So thank you for that.
Other questions or comments?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I have to
You may.
call out Dr. Flanders and Kelly Oliver. They both spent significant time on this initiative, and I think that Blake almost has his elementary education certification based on that. So he is quickly becoming at least a literacy person who can speak the talk. If not quite an expert yet, but thank you for all your time. It's been a heavy lift, and I wanted to acknowledge that.
Regent Mendoza.
So I just wanted to reiterate, I support the Kansas Blueprint on Literacy, and I feel that the board should endorse it. I just want to make sure that moving forward, there's consideration for how this goes together with multilingual learners, because it's a little bit different. It works. I endorse it, but I just think there should be some consideration for that as we move forward.
And if we're able to get a reading center, and hire multilingual environments, I think we can probably even put a focus on it in those.
Yeah.
All right.
I think also think about this as the first wave, because we're focusing on particularly pre-K through grade 3 teachers now, and there's much more to do, and that area would be one of great importance. So thank you for that.
Yes, President Ship.
I just want to say thanks for all the good work on this. And I think Chair Rolfe, you probably can relate like I can. I was one of those 4 out of 10 kids that couldn't read at level. And I remember what that felt like, right? So how interesting how life comes full circle. And now we sit here kind of on the precipice of making those realities hopefully go away, and more of those young people that you'll see them too in our Center for Reading, and certainly at the Fundamental Learning Center, where the young people look down at the floor, right? Because they're embarrassed and they feel like something's wrong with them. Why can't I read? And you feel dumb. That's what I felt like. And so I just love that this work, it's inspiring because it will make change for the state in ways that we can't even calculate today. But I think it's the individual that matters most. And when you see those young people start to look up and feel like I can do this stuff and what that means in their lives and for their families, I just think it's priceless. So congratulations to everybody for working on this. Thank you.
President Ship. Other questions or comments? We get to do work all the time that impact lives that we never meet, but this one is generational. And grateful for the deans, President Flanders, Kelly, Regent Lane, Ed, everybody who worked on this. It's great work and a great start. Now we need to get across the finish line across the street. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, unanimous. That's great. Thank you. I'm gonna think about what assignment to give you next month. All right. Okay. We have the one and only President CEO, Dr. Blake Flanders, coming up to give us the annual report on the board's strategic plan, Building a Future.
This is the first time in the last maybe 3 years that we haven't pushed the report on and moved it to the next month, if you'll remember. And so got that in the notes. That's
Our Valentine's Day gift to you.
Yes, and next
I mean, you're
time.
not ready because you didn't expect us to actually get the presentation?
That could be. And then next time, I'm not going to follow the literacy report. The blueprint was such a success. Thank you. And oh, are you not able to hear? Okay.
He just give me a hard.
I do want to thank some people. Matt Keith, I want to thank Matt Keith for all the work on this report. I'm giving the report, but certainly didn't put the report together. Obviously Elaine and Frisbee and Kelly Oliver and then really a special thank you, Cindy Ferrier. Cindy Ferrier, these data behind all this work don't just come together, and all the data people at the universities that collect all these data. It is a heavy lift. And I think you'll see from the dashboard that's been created and the additional dashboard elements that are in process, we're going to have a more robust way to glance at our system and really try to move change forward. So we developed the plan in 2018 and really had a number of focus groups throughout the state as we developed this plan. We went to Dodge City, Garden City, Colby, Topeka, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Wichita. I'm probably missing a couple places, but we met with 2 groups in each of those communities. We met with parents and students, and we also met with businesses. And those chambers helped us to set those meetings up, and we really learned a lot. And those of you that have been on the board for a while, remember that affordability was number one, parents and students. And then also there was an element that's really hard to get your arms around, that the system was hard to navigate for first generation students particularly. And so what does that mean? It could mean a different thing for every individual, but that it wasn't as intuitive as you might think. And we generally get together in focus groups and we talk about, well, what do we need to change? But what we forget is that we all navigated the system. And so we're kind of hearing from everybody who has successfully made it through as opposed to those maybe who had a tougher time. Regents adopted the plan, and then a big part of the plan is that it guides our work and that we don't just look at the metrics, we also do things as a result of those metrics. We have some promising practices. We have 3 pillars: families, businesses, and prosperity. And now we have the launch of the dashboard with foundational metrics approved by the board. We have, I wrote these down, we have maybe 15 additional metrics that are on the way, several supporting metrics. The dashboard's going to begin to look a little bit like a 747 dashboard as opposed to a car dashboard. But I have a vision how we could maybe even make it where it could be simplified. But I'm afraid that Cindy Ferrier would scream virtually. But, you know, perhaps there's a way to click on certain and create your own dashboard out of this number of metrics. So serving Kansas families. This focuses on keeping our costs, higher education as low as possible for our Kansas families, because we heard affordability in every meeting and we still hear it today. It's in news stories. The Wall Street Journal publishes something about affordability, it seems like, on a weekly basis. And so we have a number of metrics, total need-based aid, which has been a great partnership with our legislature and governor. The average award per year on time pays to graduation. What are our students borrowing? And then we've got some additional metrics as well. So we really believe that need-based aid is one of the most effective tools to reduce costs. And what I like about need-based aid is it can really shift the trajectory of your state. It's not just giving scholarship dollars to individuals who are going to go to college anyway and pay for college anyway. Sometimes that's been the case. Need-based aid really targets those who likely might have issues attending. And we've had several programs to help with that. The dashboard tracks total need-based aid award to state universities and average per student need-based aid. So there's a look at the dashboard. This is for the state universities. And this is the total need-based aid that's given. You can see that we've started to see an uptick there. And we're hopeful that continues. This includes all need-based aid, scholarships, tuition waivers received by undergraduate students attending state universities. And one thing you might know about the need-based aid that's been received is much of that comes with a match component. And so we're leveraging the foundations. They're a big part of this, foundations and endowments, to help us with students who have financial need. We heard from National Institute of Student Success that average award per year is important. So much of our financial aid over time was designed that in year one, you might receive financial aid, but then that financial aid starts to wane as you continue. And we know that as we talk to the National Institute of Student Success, they said, you really need to think about financial aid in years 2, in years 3, and years 4 to get people across the finish line. And so our average award in second year is up $172. In the fourth year is up $455. And I wonder if that's not a bit of a result from our flexible need-based aid that the universities received and now can put those packages together to really help students graduate. We've been advocating for additional need-based aid. This has been Elaine Frisbee's #1 priority. And thankfully now it's the board's #1 priority, Elaine. We advocated for a number of years and there just wasn't interest. Kansas lags in need-based aid because for years we were a high aid state from the state. So the institutions received percentage-wise larger allocations from the state and then could keep tuition really, really low. Well, when those allocations started to drop, we just never filled in with need-based aid like a number of states did. And so we're doing that now, and we thank the governor and thank the legislature for their support. We also are implementing the student success playbooks. We actually need to implement those across the entire system, including our community and technical colleges, and I think there's a real appetite to do that. But those playbooks included those targeted financial interventions. Another piece of affordability that's sometimes overlooked is on-time pays to graduation. The longer you're a student, the more opportunity cost you're missing out on just in terms of higher wages and really being able to complete that degree. So if you look at our KS degree stats, which I believe is the best website of its kind in the nation. You can see that if you add extra years to that college experience, as fun as that might be, it's incredibly costly. And so we've been tracking of the full-time students, which you have to take at least 24 hours to be considered a full-time student. How many are actually taking 30 credit hours a year? There's really no drop. Sometimes they say, well, maybe those 2 extra courses could cause a student to be unsuccessful. Well, there's no evidence of that. Students that can take 24 hours do just as well in 30 credit hours. And the reason that we don't count everybody here is, here's what we know. A higher percentage of our students are actually working now than ever before. We're going to have a number of part-time students. So this is just looking at those that say they're full-time. How do we advise them into 30 hours? And so we look at on time pace to graduation. You can see there that as we track the number of full-time students who have 30 credit hours, and then 60, 90, and 120. We've looked at this for 3 years. We've seen small but consistent improvements of on-time pace to graduation across most years for all sectors. The one thing that I'm learning here is I just believe that it's going to be incredibly hard work. You're going to get incremental change, but incremental change across the entire system can really be meaningful. So what's our response to keep people on pace? One of them is the general education framework. If you heard from President Mosier at Kansas City, Kansas, the economic impact of students losing credit. And if students lose credit, they're certainly more likely to drop out. And we don't want that. So our general education framework, we're working through right now. Some of our institutions have implemented the entire framework. Some we have some exceptions. But here's what we know, and here's what you've tasked me with. You said you're going to approve these exceptions. So for me, my lens is every exception approved sometimes is necessary, but it does erode the framework. So the more exceptions you have, the less of a framework you have. And so we know that there's going to be some exceptions, but we've really got to think about, do we really need them? And then the early college initiative, I think, is one that is, we're a little bit stalled right now, but I think one that's important. Obviously, 2+2 transfer degrees and student success playbooks. So I feel good about what the board's doing to really help in this area. Again, student loan debt, you hear about incredibly large student loan debt. Actually, in Kansas, if someone has a large student loan debt, they typically pay it off. And I'm finding out that a lot of them are doctors, and they might have a significant debt, and then they're in a service program where the hospital pays it off. So it's really hard to track that. We don't, in Kansas, I don't believe debt is as big an issue as it is nationally, but I think we get fallout from a lot of the national arguments. And then the dashboard also tracks average student loan debt by Pell status and monitors Parent Plus loans. And even though this debt doesn't follow the graduates directly, as we put on there, it is a burden for families. So there's a national trend that borrowing peaked in 2011 has declined for 12 consecutive years since. There's some evidence that debt aversion following the Great Recession has played a role. And we wonder if students now are, and their families are reticent about taking out debt. And that actually could prevent, could hamper college going rate, and it also could hamper individuals from completing. We look at student debt with our Pell recipients and our non-Pell recipients. And the one thing I'd tell you about student debt is sometimes middle to even middle upper class families do borrow. So you can't just look at student debt and say, well, that's the whole story. We really need to dig into that. You know, I personally don't believe in the collective that student debt is a big problem in Kansas. Our average debt is very reasonable. But that doesn't mean that it's not a problem for the individual. And so we need to continue to always monitor that. I think our institutions do a good job. They have some restrictions on advising students, I hear, on student loans. So you have to be cautious as an institution that you don't advise too robustly against someone taking out a loan. Our response, again, was need-based financial aid. The Promise Scholarship has been one of the bigger aid programs that we've had as a state, and certainly we expect to see growth. I think early college, I still think we need to really focus on having a few academic courses that are tuition-free at the high school level. And then the board and the institutions have had an emphasis on keeping tuition increases very low. I don't remember a time when we've even kept pace with inflation. And so we've asked the institutions now. I think we have a really good model going forward. And I guess I'll say it's a model of, maybe half of the CPI, you figure out how to cover through efficiencies, and maybe we'll ask for half of the CPI in tuition. So there's a balance there in terms of how we're going to keep tuition low. Access. So many times we focused on access. I don't ever want to focus on access without focusing on success, because you don't just want access, but I will say that I still believe access is an issue. We want to keep this system as accessible as possible, and it's not always just related to price. So the cost of, particularly the cost of tuition. We look at college going rates, enrollment gaps, and a few additional metrics, about 12 of those actually. We know we've got a college going rate declining, and it's imperative to reverse the trend. Here's the high school graduate projections, and a big concern for me is our college going rate was dropping even while our classes were not getting smaller in size. Now you're going to see the total start to decrease because of those decreased birth rates. And so if we're going to mitigate that, we have to ensure that we really promote access and actually do the things that are going to help with access. So there's our percentage of Kansas high school graduates entering the publics. Up high is, you can see that drop. Privates have stayed relatively flat, maybe up just a little bit, and then the out-of-state students about the same. But we've had a real drop into our technical colleges, community colleges, and universities. Now, not every sector has been impacted the same, and the technical colleges have grown. They've probably done a better job reaching into the high schools and serving those students, but we've seen a decline overall. So what have we done about it? You heard a report on the FAFSA challenge. We've collaborated with the state board. That's going to be in 2028 is the first year that that's a requirement to complete the FAFSA for graduation. I think that's a structural change. It's going to be a real advantage. We have an initiative for early college. Unfortunately, that was not included in the budget, but I still want to press for that. And then pre-application days that I believe was a success. I want to talk just a little bit about that. When we talk about early college, some might come away with that saying, well, we're not doing a good job with concurrent enrollment. We do very well with concurrent enrollment. Our numbers on concurrent enrollment, community colleges, technical colleges generally are the ones that are delivering most of those courses. And our numbers in the aggregate look really good. But here's some troubling stats. If you look kind of underneath this, our concurrent students are 73.7% white. Kansas population is 65.6%. 3.1% black. Kansas population 6.1%. 14.7% Hispanic. 18% is the Hispanic population. So one might say you're giving a jump start to students who might already go to college as opposed to reaching new populations. That's where I think if we can figure out, we fund that student, fully fund them on one side, we fund them 1/3 or 2/3 on the other side. How do we bring that together and get students a few courses that are tuition free in high school? I think that's where you start to reach the other population. On the free application days, I just wanted to mention, we had an 11% increase in college applications, more high schools participated. You know, I really believe that there's a number of barriers for students as they enter the system. So I try to look at the lens, what about a first generation student? So right now, even without a free application day, if you're a student that can't afford the admission fee at a university, okay, so our community colleges don't have an admission fee, but if you can't afford the admission fee at a university, you can actually get that covered. So generally, the way the process works is you go to your high school counselor, you get a voucher, is that what it would be called? And you can get that covered. But the problem is, I think, is again, it's just not simple enough. I think this is something the board needs to look at. I know the institutions, I heard this morning, are concerned about yield. If it were me, I want to talk more. I'd recommend today to not have any more application fees and determine how we're going to finance that. Because the first generation student sometimes doesn't know if they belong anyway. And you put additional steps in for them to try to get the application fee waived, and they just don't do it. And so, you know, I think it's something the board should consider. We also look at enrollment gaps. If we're not doing well with populations that are growing in Kansas, we're not going to be able to serve our state. And we include race, ethnicity, rural status, and Pell status. We still have some gaps there. The gap for Black students has narrowed from 1.8 to 1.4. For Hispanic students, though, the gap has grown from 1.9 to 2.1%. So if I just look at Hispanic students, a 2.1 percentage gap doesn't sound like it's very large. That's more than 4,500 Hispanic students that we're underserving. So we have to increase the number of Hispanic students by nearly 20% to close that gap. So it's sometimes the gaps look relatively small, but as you get into those, that we really need focused effort if we're really going to make a difference. And if you look at our communities, I believe liberal high school would be something like 10% white. Dodge City might be 15%. Yeah, so these communities, as Chair Rolfe, as you said, we can argue about a lot of things, but not the demographics of the state. And that diversity is there.
Like,
yes.
is that, when you're looking at the Kansas population, is that the population as a whole, or is that the population of high school students or the prospective students that could go to a higher education?
I believe we've overlaid that with, I think it's the population as a whole. And then sometimes our university populations look a little better than this. The only students we take at the university are actually the resident students. So if universities have robust recruiting pipelines from out of state, and their actual numbers might look different, but the students were from out of state, we want to see, did it serve Kansans? So I'm not certain if our gap numbers are based on 18 to 24 or if they're based on the entire state. I think it's the Kansas population. So maybe what we need to do is, our numbers might be not as good if we overlaid them by the 18 to 20-year-olds. So I'll go back and look at that. Because the needle's moving on that. We also look at, are we serving Pell recipients? And you can see that the percent of students receiving Pell nationally has declined by 35%. 20 years ago, Pell covered 38% of in-state tuition fees and housing. Now it covers 31%. So Pell's not adequate. That's why we need need-based aid as well. That's why the Promise Act can work, because you take the Pell and then you can add the additional resource that's needed in that. And you can see how we're doing in terms of Pell recipient enrollment and how many Pell we'd have for the Kansas population. We still have some gaps there. And we expect that. But we do know that I wanted to say just a little bit about the new FAFSA. The new FAFSA, we're supposed to have a larger number of Kansans qualify for the FAFSA than we had in the past. What we heard from the group today in the the Council of Presidents is the delays have been damaging. So the FAFSA release now is targeted for March 1, I believe, is what we heard from Thomas Lane. That is what the universities and colleges are doing. If they're giving estimated packages to students, trying to tell them, here's what we think you're going to receive, I think they're doing yeoman's work in the field and on the ground to try to mitigate this. But there's no doubt that this delay is likely going to damage some enrollments.
So my reading, if I read that, I don't know if these are kind of Valentine's Day colors, the lighter pink line of the Kansas population. Does that tell me that our population, more people as a percent fell below the poverty line in 23 than 22 as a population? Did our state move that much in 1 year?
So this just says, here's what the Kansas population would be that qualified for FAFSA, and here's how many we're serving. So I don't know what it is in terms of if you were outside of that, or I'm not sure how it relates to the Kansas economy for sure.
Okay. Regent Lane?
Thank you. Dr. Flanders, what has been the explanation from the feds about FAFSA? It's supposed to be a much simpler process, and it sounds like it's gone the other direction.
It's like government at work.
You know, it's almost, not a great explanation. I mean, I think that many times, and we all can do this, you have one good idea, and every idea to be on the form is a good idea, except when you put them all together, it crushes it. And I hope that's not where we are. You know, and I know that our people on the ground are going to make this work, but it's going to be difficult. So we've had, again, the early college, the Applied Kansas, and some of our FAFSA completion efforts. This is where we need to continue to focus. And then success, obviously, we don't want to just have access. We need to have success. I think the institutions are really digging in here, and I know you as a board have really looked at this. How do we keep people persisting in higher ed? How do we have people graduate? And how do we make sure that people have sustaining wages once they graduate? It's not all about the job you get when you graduate, but we do need to be aware that that is an important factor. We have to have some return on investment for a college degree. So our persistent rates look at students who after 6 years have either completed a degree or certificate or are still working on one. That's kind of a national standard. And the students who are not captured in the persistence rate have exited higher education without earning a credential. That results in lost investment, and you just have a greater risk in an economic turndown. Now, we've tried to look at our success rates and our persistent rates here holistically, and you can see we've had just a little bit of growth. I see our institutions paying more and more attention to making sure that people are completing. I also think we need to probably dig deeper into programs like Senate Bill 155. When Senate Bill 155 is a huge success, okay, and that's where a student can take career and tech ed at the high school level, and I've talked to a senator about this. But are they completing the credential? Early on, there was incentives actually for them to complete the credential. Those were removed. So do we have students who are doing more sampling, or do we have people who are completing a credential? And we've heard from our community and technical colleges a need for certified nurse aides in these communities, mental health professionals that are credentialed in these communities. So we need to continue to focus on completion there as well. Student success playbooks, I would say that we have those really in place at the universities. I think that the community colleges and tech colleges are eager to begin that work as well with support. Again, the Gen Ed framework and our transfer degrees are going to be important. The percentage of graduates making at least 250% of the federal poverty level 5 years after graduation is where we put the sustaining wage, and you can see what that is for Kansas. You also do not qualify for public benefits when you're at that rate. So that's kind of where we put that wage. In some communities, you'd say, well, that's not exactly where we want to be, but it is the metric that's used. And then it kind of provides an estimate for the graduates that are getting a value. I think we're doing well here, candidly. I think it's something we always need to pay attention to. But if you look at our public universities, 86%. So most are doing well there. And even our most modest category, we're still, over 7 out of 10 are doing well. Again, I think it's something we continue to monitor, continue to pay attention to. But there's no doubt in the value of a college degree. It's just how do we communicate that value, and the System Council of Presidents is looking at ways to do that. Applied learning, I think, is a way to really improve this. Wichita State's made a commitment to applied learning. You can see others doing more in that space. We heard from Fort Hays today that they were doing more in that space as well. Our micro internship program, typically students earn between $15 and $20 per hour of work for that. We get supporting grants. We've had help from the DeBruce Foundation and the Strada Foundation for that. The governor included support in her budget for that. And I believe that it's something that as students are in their programs, how do we get them connected to a Kansas business? And then I think program review and portfolio review. Our old program review process was essentially, are we doing things right? Is the quality there? And the new process adds another element. Are we doing the right things? Is this program, should it be in the portfolio? And I think rightfully, the regents and institutions included wages as a part of that evaluation. Obviously, student interest is key too. But we need to continue to scrutinize our programs. The institutions do that and make sure we have the right kind of portfolio for Kansans and our students. That's Pillar 1's the most extensive by far. I'm going to go relatively fast through Pillar 2. It's about the talent pipeline. We've couple of initiatives I mentioned, Excel and CTE. I don't ever want to overlook the engineering initiative. That's been going on for a number of years. The legislature and governor re-upped that initiative. They're a high demand occupation. They're a job creator, I think it's like 3.5 jobs per engineer. If you have a high concentration of engineers in your economy, it's going to be good for your state. And it's just key industries, manufacturing, technology, they're everywhere. And you can look, our baseline was 875 when we started, and we've done well. Now we've come down a little bit, but I expect that trend to move the other way. And we've more than exceeded the 1365 goal that was set to us by the legislature. I just want to tell you that every time we've had legislative partnership, and with the governor as well, but anytime that funding has come to us and we've had a goal, this system's responded. We've made that goal. We talked about Excel and CTE, and here's our numbers. We'd always served between 3,500 and 3,800 students, and now we're over 15,000. This is an initiative that has worked, and now we just need to say, I think we could again pay more attention to the completion of this, our students completing, but clearly we're getting more students in career and technical education programs. Our system-wide approaches, we talked about program review, talked about an enhanced partnership with Commerce, got transfer degrees in the pipeline now, and we need to continue to improve connections. I think we can really look at our universities and colleges as talent pools for industry. How can industry come into that educational experience earlier and not wait while they graduate? When that student graduates, if we have a Kansas industry come in the spring of the year for a May graduation date, hoping to recruit students, they're up against some pretty intense competition. So I think we can give them an edge. Innovation, we've talked about the research side of Pillar 2. You've had the full reports on R&D funding. I won't spend a lot of time on that. I would just like to mention though one thing, kind of interesting to me. I wrote this down. I think just at KU alone, we've made a big deal out of Panasonic. It is a big deal. Was that 4,000 jobs? I think the research enterprise at KU is like 4,300 maybe. That's all money coming from out of the state. Indirect. This is a huge economic driver. We don't talk about that enough in terms of how that can really drive not only just its own economic engine, but also help our Kansas business. It attracts companies. And then Pillar 3, I didn't mention. I thought he might say something. Sean Nacarado was on the original team that helped develop Pillar 3. And I thought, Sean's got the microphone. He's going to brag about that a little bit, but he was worried about his pants. And so, but this is really something unique. It's something we're learning and developing. We look at those direct jobs. How are we partnering with the Department of Commerce? How are we actually recruiting companies? Are companies coming because of do we have a real hand in it? And I think you're seeing that across our system. I don't know of states that have closer partnerships between education and commerce like we do here. It's really, we've had several successes as you look at some of those. We had the Secretary of Commerce and Lieutenant Governor here talking about ways we can improve, having single points of contact. We're going to be working on that, creating a front door to make it easy for business and industry to access all of the programs we have at our colleges and universities. And I look forward to an enhanced partnership with Commerce. So what are my recommendations? I'm going to say the third one first. I think we can really think about ways in our next, we don't need any more goals for this year, but in our goals, let's think about ways that we can leverage the higher education system to help all Kansans, regardless if they ever enrolled in higher ed or not. And I served on a group that we were doing some procurement for the Cancer Center. I thought, here is one initiative that's going to help almost all Kansans. Every Kansan has either personally been touched by or had some family member or someone they knew touched by cancer. Whether or not they completed a GED, whether or not they graduated from high school, regardless of their level of education, our higher ed system can really help them. You think about some of the blueprint. Some of those students may never go to college. This higher ed system is going to lead and help all of those Kansans by the blueprint on literacy. You know, the Kansas State Water Institute, coupled with the Geological Survey at KU, where they can work together to say, how do we save water in Western Kansas? How do we maintain that resource? How do we make sure to future-proof that? And no matter what your status is as a learner, obviously we're going to really help with those that went through college, but we can do things that help all Kansans. I think it's something we need to think about. I would still, in a smaller way, concurrent enrollment, I still think we need to dig in there. I think it's our pathway to new populations of students, and then I would continue to advocate for student financial aid. So that concludes my report.
President Flanders, and I assume you'll email that out to the board. All right, what questions do you guys have? Yes, Regent Benson.
Mr. Chair, Blake, you mentioned engaging businesses sooner. You know, the medical field has done a very good job of, identifying students while they're still in high school, and then they maintain contact with them throughout college, often scholarshiping them. How is there a way that we as a board or the institutions could look to replicate that across other fields, whether it's engineers or whatever the case is? How do we replicate that success that the medical field has had in reaching down that early in the scholastic process?
Yeah, so, you know, we know with engineering, I can't predict if you're going to become an engineer, but I can almost predict if you won't be by your 6th grade math scores. By what your placement in 7th grade math is critical if you're going to become an engineer. So if we did look at students who are excelling in mathematics, that would be a way, and connect them with companies and with universities. That would be a way to do that. Those data, there's always a data issue, you know, there in terms of privacy, but I think we probably need to put together a group that can think through that and say, what's the best way to do that? That's why some of this work, you know, I would say, you know, I'm using engineering. Engineering is typically a high wage job. Okay, so if you look at all of the jobs, people do really well. It always kind of hurts me to see that a student that doesn't get early intervention, which includes reading, is going to have a real difficult time. We just about can't take that student and save them at this 11th hour, which is post-secondary education. So I'd love to think through that.
And not looking to add any goals. It just seems like with such
goal for the retreat.
Well, with such a workforce shortage, I think a lot of businesses would be open to scholarship programs or whatever the case. They just have no expertise in it. But they know they're going to have to find the workforce somewhere. And if they could get a jump on it instead of showing up at an April job fair and trying to talk a student that's going to graduate the next month into working for them, I think they would welcome an opportunity to enter that process earlier.
Yeah, and I see that as a difference sometimes with our larger sophisticated companies. They're better at recruiting. And they also have a name brand, okay? But they're, I've seen it in my own family, how it was done. They're really good at it. Have more resource to put to it.
Regent Lane?
Thank you very much. As you think about, Dr. Flanders, how to guide us forward and thinking about creating more opportunities, the Real World Learning Initiative over in the KC metropolitan area does exactly what Regent Benson was talking about. It's that work-based learning that we've talked about with our K-12 partners in terms of starting even in middle school, creating opportunities to explore, and then actual internships and all kinds of connections with business and industry. So it might be a nice thing for a retreat to have them come talk about what they've learned in that area.
I just wanted to add that in Kansas City, organizations like Society of Women Engineers engage schools. Actually, there was an event called Introduce a Girl to Engineering day. And then they also went to middle school. But it's mostly from the Kansas City and peripheral high schools. And I think it would be a good concept for us to introduce throughout Kansas and see if there are organizations that are willing to. What they do is bring in engineers as mentors for one whole day and work alongside or spend alongside high school and middle school kids. So that's a good inspiration, like a boost of knowledge or somebody they can depend on. And organizations and big corporations come to those events and participate. So
You know, those partnerships are going to be important. And I think other partnerships that I gathered out of the retreat that we need to do, and we just haven't had the resource yet to drill down on this, but you saw that slide on need-based aid and total need-based aid. So what we've got now is we really have the foundations working closely with the institutions to leverage private resource with the state need-based aid. I think the next step is, when we heard from the Hispanic Development Fund, is how can we work with those individuals to say, okay, you have the resource to award year one. Now we'll partner with you and we can do years 2, 3, and 4. It'll just make our dollars stretch longer if we can develop those deeper partnerships.
Other questions or comments? Great job. Thank you, President Flanders. All right, Wesley, come on up. We'll do student health insurance benefits and premium rates for plan year 24 and 25.
Thank you. My name is Wesley Winch. I am the Vice President for Administration and Finance at Fort Hays State University. But this year I also got the pleasure of serving as the chair for the Student Insurance Advisory Committee, also called SEAC. That committee has representation from across the entire system and really tasked with looking at insurance premiums and benefits for our students throughout the systems to make sure that students who want insurance can have health insurance. And there are some programs and situations where it's required for students to have insurance. And so we need to provide access to that for them. We currently use United Healthcare as our insurance provider for our students across the system. And looking, as we worked with them this fall, and looking at what was coming in the future, they did their modeling and they came back with a proposal that there would be no increases to the rates to our students and no decreases to the benefits for our students. And the committee, after reviewing that, agreed with that recommendation and have put that through the committee and through COPS as recommendation. And now it's before you to accept for next year, no increase to the rates for our students and no decrease to the benefits as offered by United Healthcare. And I can get into details if you wish, but that is the recommendation on the table. I stand for questions.
Last time, did we determine in governance the last time that it was held flat, there was dinosaurs still? Just keeping everybody on their toes. Any questions? This is a win. All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
I can motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, good work, Betty. You easiest report on this you'll ever have to give, would be my guess. All right, Elaine, come on back. We have a memorandum of agreement with Kansas State Board of Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bring this down a little bit. The next item is on page 78, but in front of you, Regents, you have a copy of a memorandum of agreement. This memorandum of agreement, it creates a new advisory council for Indigenous education. And while this is attached to our two boards, State Board of Regents and the State Board of Education, it does also include the 4 tribal nations in Kansas. And in the attachment that's in front of you with the handout, those 4 tribes are noted, and attached to that are signed resolutions from 3 of the 4 tribes signing on to the agreement as well. I just want to note that we are seeking approval of this agreement by you today. I would ask that in a motion, then you would approve the agreement contingent on the fourth tribal nation signing on, the Iowa tribe of Kansas and Nebraska. And I believe that approval is in the works locally, just hasn't made its way to us. And I do want to acknowledge Dr. Alex Redcorn, faculty member from Kansas State University, nationally awarded. And as here also, if there are questions about the process from the council.
Love to invite him up to the podium if he wants to say anything. Thanks for coming.
Oh, welcome. I'm webinar is how you say thank you in Osage. Appreciate the time. And Hawaii, how's it going? Alex Redcorn, Department of Ed Leadership at Kansas State University. I'm happy to be here. This is really the culminating work of a couple years where we started to realize our state doesn't have a lot of collaborative structures to work with tribal nations. And tribal nations have unique status of sovereignty, and their citizens are all attending the state-run schools, both at the K through 12 and the higher ed level. And so after a couple of years of doing some relationship building with tribes and working with them to try to figure out how should this work and how could this work, and also looking to other states, because quite honestly, a lot of states with federally recognized tribes already within their boundaries already have structures like this. And so we spent 2 years talking with each other, building relationships to work this out. And this is kind of the culmination of that, to continue these conversations, because there's ongoing work that needs to be done, as there is in all of our educational systems. And so appreciate hearing about this and doing this work. And if anybody has any questions about the process or anything about it, I'd be happy to answer.
Sure appreciate your leadership on this issue. Any questions or comments? Elena?
I just wanted to say thank you for that commitment, and this is pretty amazing work.
You want to make the motion?
And yes, I will.
All right, we got a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, then moving second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Good work. It took a long time to get to that moment. So thank you. All right. Last but not least, you'll remember we put the legislative update on our agenda at this point. So you thought you were getting out of here unless you made the notations. So,
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you.
Well, somehow we are already in the middle of week 6 of the legislative session. Time is flying by. At times it feels like it's not moving, and other times it's Friday every day. So anyway, we are quickly approaching turnaround, which is the date that bills have to be out of their originating chamber. So House bills have to be out of House bills, Senate bills have to be out of Senate bills, except for some exceptions, which they can always come up with some if they need them. So next Tuesday is the final days for committees to meet, and then next Friday is turnaround. So at this point in time, the committees have been quite busy, but we've not seen a whole lot of activity on the floor of either chamber yet until the last couple days. I'm guessing early next week, you're going to have lots of activity in committees, and then lots of bills being debated later in the week next week as we get towards that Friday deadline. After today, the budget presentations to the House Higher Education Budget Committee and the Senate Ways and Means Subcommittee are complete. The House Committee has not debated or worked the higher education budgets yet. Yesterday, the Senate Committee did make a couple of enhancements to the governor's budget, then directed that nearly all of the governor's recommendations be removed and then reconsidered later at omnibus. So we'll continue to pay close attention to that and advocate for the items in your unified budget request. Your team's had good success so far moving forward with your legislative proposals. You have 3 proposals that would make changes to the service scholarships. All 3 of those were introduced in the House Education Committee. Dr. Flanders testified on those earlier this week. I think it was on Monday. One of those, we're working with the Kansas Hospital Association on an amendment. We've been exchanging proposals this afternoon. I think we're really close on something. If that happens, hopefully the committee will work all 3 of those bills tomorrow. You have one bill that clarifies eligibility for all accelerating, so that all accelerating opportunity Kansas students receive a $500 program stipend that was authorized by the legislature last year. We had a hearing on this bill earlier this afternoon. Kelly was a little late today because she was over there delivering that testimony for us, and she said that hearing went well. That leaves 2 of your other priorities. One is in House Bill 2640, which creates the Kansas Strategic Research Fund. That bill's in House Commerce Committee, which has had quite a few complex issues, so they've not given us a hearing yet, but I've not given up hope, so we'll see what happens with that one. And then the final one would have made changes to the state's 529 college savings accounts. Before introducing that bill, a couple of us went and met with State Treasurer Stephen Johnson to make sure he didn't have any concerns with that. And we learned during that meeting that there's a study underway to take a comprehensive look at the 529 plans and maybe make some additional program changes. And so we agreed to work alongside the treasurer's office once they got that study back to see if there's other things that we can all do together to improve that program. And then finally, we're just monitoring a number of other bills that directly or indirectly impact higher ed. Your team's provided testimony on some of those, and we're keeping our eyes open on others that we may want to weigh in. Any questions about anything? Those or other things going on across the street?
Questions or comments for Fred? Anybody? That was a complete report, I guess.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
all.
much. Thanks for your hard work over there. We appreciate it. Regents, we got dinner tonight with our friends from the 2-year sector at Washburn. We're looking forward to that annual tradition. And Heather and Ryan, if I can talk to you guys after, just real quick, if we make sure we're on the same page for that. And then tomorrow morning, we have breakfast with our academic officers at 8:30 here. So we'll look forward to that. Anything else to come before this board today? Okay, and Jim. Yes, one and only Jim Jeanette. All right, there are a lot of one and onlys. That's what I was saying earlier. All right, everybody, thanks. This meeting's adjourned today.